going here. So if you're new to repetitive strain injury and you look back, can you remember a time that you weren't injured and think about the things you would have done differently if you could turn back the clock? We have two guests here today, Alexandria Karstens, who's a fabulous dragon trainer, and Will, who's a surfer and he plays the guitar and he's a coder and does all kinds of water things. So they're going to talk about their experience. She's had repetitive strain injury for 25 years. He's had repetitive strain injury for 2 years. So we're going to get some different perspectives. Now, I know this is entitled Mistakes I Wish I Hadn't Made. That is true to a point, but how can you prevent a disease if you've never heard of it? How can you help yourself if your doctor has never heard of it and doesn't know what to do about it? How can you help yourself if you're on workers' comp and you have to wait weeks and weeks and weeks to get treatment when you should be really treated right away? And there's a lot of things that aren't your fault. So I hope you don't fault yourself if you have RSI and think that it's all on you, because we really need to get the word out and get better tools and better working conditions for everybody so that this disease doesn't happen to people, because the only cure really is prevention. So we're going to have a discussion about things we wish you had done differently with our two guests, and you're welcome to join in the comments. I would just like to say that we want to keep this place very safe, so please keep your comments very polite. No spam, no links, no favorite cures, no giving unsolicited advice. Just keep it really positive and talk about your own experiences. So let me introduce Alexandria and Will. And Alexandria had prepared this fabulous cheat sheet talking about the things that she wished she hadn't done, started with working through pain. So would you like to talk about that, Alexandria?
Sure, Deborah. Working through the pain was largely as a result of my not understanding what was going on with me. There was very little information 25 years ago about RSI and what could attribute to that. I knew it was computer related, very likely, because obviously that would exacerbate my symptoms. But there's the misconception that it will go away like any other ailment you might have, and it didn't go away. Although sometimes I would have a bit of a reprieve and I would think, aha, and keep going until suddenly it went even worse. And it was never a situation of getting really better. In fact, over time, it just got worse and worse. And I was a workaholic as well, still am. Um, but that definitely exacerbated the symptoms as well. And we really need to listen to our bodies. And because I didn't, I
Yeah.
just kept going literally until I couldn't even hold a pen anymore. I just could not use my hands. And yeah,
And you said you had the belief that all healthcare practitioners have the answers and can help you,
yes,
but
yes.
that wasn't the case for you, right?
No, no. And again, I was younger, and I don't want to say naive, but I think a lot of people, we do believe that our healthcare practitioners do know what's going on. And my own at the time, he was a sports medicine doctor, so you would think he would understand what was going on with the body when the body was not functioning on that level, on a mechanical level. And he really gave a lot of bad advice. I went to a massage therapist who didn't help. And I went to a physiotherapist who didn't help either. And I didn't know any better. I just figured, okay, well, I'm a problem. And it was very depressing because then suddenly the realization, oh my gosh, this is going to be lifelong, which it did become, but it doesn't have to, especially in this day and age, if people are
Well,
educated.
I think education can only go so far given the way people are expected to use their hands repetitively on it.
Yeah.
It just can't. even education and good technique and good tools can't overcome the sheer amount of overuse that most people are faced with. But tell us about, you said that you were splinting almost 24/7, the
Yeah.
suggestion of your doctor and physiotherapists when
Yes.
catastrophic results.
Exactly. And I mean, I even went so far as to have custom splints made. Again, the physiotherapist, they had a hand clinic there, and
Mhm.
so they molded one to my arms, but they said, "Well, you've got to rest." So I was splinting and I had no idea. I should have known better, but I wasn't thinking about it. That my muscles atrophied to the point where, my ability to even manipulate, a glass toothbrush, it just drastically declined. So again, that made everything so much worse. And no one said, hey, maybe you should stop. Maybe you should wean yourself off the splints. They put me in splints and they kept seeing me regularly. They knew I was in splints, and there was never any question of maybe, how was I feeling about it? Where to go from here? I just thought, gosh, I guess this is it. And
Yeah, splinting is not a good idea. I mean, it needs to be done judiciously. Let me put it that way. Splinting is helpful if you have carpal tunnel syndrome because it keeps the wrist straight so the nerves aren't compressed, when you're sleeping and bending them like that. But the problem with splints is people can get addicted to them. They rely on them, and it's really bad if you're working because then you're working against the splint. You're not using your hands normally. So, splinting needs to be done judiciously under a doctor's care so that you don't have problems. I mean, it can lead to atrophy, lack of fluid return, and other serious problems. It's been associated with other more serious problems than that. So, um, it it's something that people do themselves. They just go to the drugstore and get a splint, thinking that will help them, and it helps them momentarily. Maybe they feel a little bit better because they're being supported, but it's kind of like slouching. That feels good for a minute, but it's really bad for you over the long term. Um, so anyway, and then you're talking about making your employer understand what you were going through, and they figured you couldn't use a computer, so they wanted you to do sort of labor intensive has like setting up meeting rooms and making coffee and presumably pouring the coffee,
yeah.
um, and that made you worse, which brings us back to one of Will's points. I want him to make this point about you can't use your other pair of hands.
Yeah. So it's a quote I've heard from you, and it like was pretty funny when I heard it because I knew about RSI before I started having problems. So it was something in my mind that I was always worried about. As a software developer, oh, this is a condition that happens to some people. I've heard of some well-known software developers that I've learned a lot from that got the condition later in their life. And so for me though, I always had like this association. This will be terrible for my career, and I never like imagined, which is quite ridiculous, but I never thought about how, of course, you only have one pair of hands, and it's going to affect everything in life, not just your career. So it's like, I don't know. On one hand, it's like you don't have another pair of hands, like very obvious. But until you have the condition, at least for me, it's not something I really thought about, despite how obvious that
And
problem would
talk
be.
about how it's affected you in other ways. I
Yeah,
mean,
so you mentioned in the introduction that I love water sports and specifically surfing, and it's tough. I mean, I can surf, but it's like there's pain to do the push up on the surfboard every time. So I haven't I basically have stopped surfing completely because there's no joy in it when I know I could be incurring further damage. So I mean, that's and also I play the guitar. That one, I guess, like it's not. That was maybe not so surprising that it would affect the guitar, but surfing was definitely one where it was like, wow, this is quite unfortunate. It's just now my career has been a lot harder, and one of my life's passions. Not something I can really do nowadays.
Yeah, I think the life passions can be one of the hardest things. I mean, something as simple as holding a book. There's someone who writes into the channel and she has this favorite series of books and she can't hold the books and she loves them. I mean, there's something about a book that's different from the audio book or and I'm not even a Kindle, you still have to hold it. You still have to manipulate it with your hands. At one point I saw this gadget. I don't know if they still make it. It's for reading in bed, and it was a piece of plexiglass. So you'd be lying on your back, and there'd be like lucite or plexiglass holding the book open, so you could read the book. But you can see how cumbersome that is.
Yeah.
You know,
Especially if you're
whereas
a fast reader.
yeah, exactly. You turn the pages, and
The Kindle is a
but
big problem. I think there's a good opportunity there for some improvement with the ergonomics of the Kindle because you have to tap, tap, tap the screen. I love reading and I love my Kindle, but that's, it's another problem.
I know. I mean, if they would just get rid of scrolling, I would be so happy
Yeah.
because clicking and dragging anything, I've got good ergonomic solutions for a lot of stuff, but scrolling, even dragging, I can't figure out how to scroll with it.
I'll
So,
teach you.
oh, you'll teach me. Good.
I
I'm
will.
ready because it's like I just it's just like, oh God, I want to see the screen and then I've got to go back and do this whole thing and oh, um yeah, but
Audiobooks, sorry.
go ahead, audiobooks.
I was going to say, I've become an audiobook addict. I am a voracious reader, and as I mentioned, I'm moving across the country, and I'm having to edit the contents of my house, including I don't know how many hundreds upon hundreds of books, physical books, and I realized I can't read them anymore. And so I'm only keeping the ones that are very near and dear to me. But for the last, I don't know how many years, I've amassed over 1,000 audiobooks, and they've gotten so much better. It is, they read, or I should say, listen to almost like a play, and
Mhm.
some of them are fantastic. So I do encourage people to look at that, but I also just had another idea. You were talking about the plexiglass and the Kindle. This may put some people at odds with books or with me, sorry, regarding their books. What about debinding the books? In
Oh,
other
there are people who rip the pages of the books
Yeah,
out.
and and
Yeah.
and that's a lot easier to manipulate
Yeah,
than
and turning the pages.
but I mean, I know it destroys the book sort of,
Yeah,
but
but they get to read.
yeah,
I mean, this
exactly.
is this is a legitimate. I'm glad you brought it up because it's a legitimate thing that people actually do because they want to read that way.
Yeah.
And it's easier because I think especially with decor veins, like you can't flip pancakes or I mean it's just too hard on your hands and turning the pages of a book or magazine can be um, very hard. So getting back here
Sure.
to Alexandria's fabulous outline, you said initially taking the advice of one doctor who was not helpful at all.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, that dovetails back into what I was saying that I trusted that my GP would be a good springboard for me, and the people he sent me to weren't helpful either. So I wish I'd known that you could really shop around, try a different GP. I know we're not, especially here in Canada, we don't have a lot of options, but if you can find another GP, another person you can talk to, a physician, I should say, um, to get more feedback. Don't stop with just one. Get multiple meetings with different physicians because someone might know more than the other ones. So I,
Yeah, if people have a chance to do, I mean, this is a very common question that I get is what doctor should I see? And it's not what specialty so much as what the doctor knows, because the hand is incredibly complex. I mean, just there's brain connections and nerves and tendons, and it's just a whole massive massive piece of learning that they've got to go through. And I'm not convinced a lot of doctors will take the time. I think they get 4 to 8 hours in medical school, and this is the leading occupational injuries to the upper extremity. So doctors are not really prepared just out of the gate to deal with the most common occupational, one of the leading occupational injuries is to the upper extremity. But you could try occupational medicine. Sometimes they know more, or physiatrists.
Yeah.
Those are physical doctors. Uh, they do physical medicine. And if you're really lucky, you might find an osteopath, like a doctor of osteopathy who does hands on work. Those are very rare, but they tend to treat the whole body and they tend not to prescribe drugs or injections or the things that really aren't so useful. So those kinds of things can be helpful.
I think one thing on one of the other videos that you had an interview with Dr. Markinson, if I say his name correctly.
Markison.
Yeah, he said, and I think this is a good idea to go through, is like asking your doctor if they're interested in the hand. If
Great
that's something,
point.
Yeah.
because like you said, I think one of the big issues with this injury is that there's many different variations. It's a very complex issue, completely, not something you can see easily with tools. Um, so, like, unless someone is really intrigued and like, helping you to figure out the puzzle, it's there's a lot
Well,
of people willing to sell, I think, cheap solutions,
the
or
thing,
they just genuinely don't understand it. So,
or my suspicion on that topic, and thank you for bringing it up, Will, is that do they care? It's time consuming.
Yeah.
People don't get better. Doctors like to feel like their patients are getting better. And so you don't, you go into medicine, you want to be the hero and cure people and stuff. And when it comes to chronic diseases, it's not so much fun. People are crying in your office and they're losing their homes and all kinds of things are raining down on them. So that could be another reason why a doctor would not be interested in that specialty. It's like the reason why some doctors don't go into OBGYN because they're afraid of getting sued if something happens to the baby. I mean, there's all kinds of things that could um, lead a doctor to not want to really deal with this specialty. So I think it's good to have an honest conversation and say to your doctor, are you willing to help me? Because the other thing is, a lot of them do not wish to get involved with the workers' compensation system. So that could be another reason why I suspect that doctors think that, I mean, they say that RSI is not related to the computer or not related to work. And you kind of have to wonder if they understand anything about repetitive strain injury or biomechanics if they would not see the connection between violating the Blix curve, the ideal length of the musculotendinous unit for 8 hours a day. We're just not we're not meant to be working this way.
And that's a good red flag. I mean, if you do encounter a doctor that just really doesn't care, yeah, run to the next one. But one thing I do have to say, I have a couple of clients. Most of my clients are doctors. And I do have a couple that are very passionate about helping people with RSI. I mean, just incredibly so. So there are good doctors out there, but they are few and far between, unfortunately. But keep trying.
Yeah, I concur. I mean, you really have to look, and there are some wonderful doctors, and God bless them. I think they're saints, because it's not easy for the doctors either. There's a lot of pressure for them to see people in a finite kind of way, and it's sort of an assembly line. And it's just not the best medical system that we have here. So getting back, okay, um, this is an interesting point that Alexandria brought up. Trying too hard to recover. I am so glad that you said that. So let's talk about that.
Oh boy. You know, when you're a workaholic in work, you're pretty much just as passionate with everything else. And the whole idea that, yes, I'm going to get better. I am going to get through this physiotherapy. I'm going to exercise more, stretch harder. And that is the worst thing that I could have done, was to approach healing with the same intensity that I do with other things in life. And you cannot force yourself to get better. You can't.
The
And
body has
boy,
its own timetable.
yeah, that was a cold cup of coffee to take. I just thought, well, yes, and no, no, and that, like I said, that was hard. That was really hard.
Yeah,
Um,
it's hard for people to stop doing, and a lot of times they overdo it, thinking exactly that they're going to get better
exactly.
faster if they overdo
Yep.
it. It's a really good way to make your injury worse. And also, if you're not given appropriate exercises, I mean, the exercises that people give to strengthen the hand, this tissue that's been destroyed from
Yeah.
overuse, now you're thinking you're going to strengthen it.
You'd
Um,
cry if you knew what they put me through and what I thought was good, and then which you have said in other videos, don't do this. This is very bad. And I can attest, yes.
yeah,
Listen to Deborah, everyone. Listen to Deborah.
yeah. Okay, so um, then we talk about harmful computer peripherals.
Oh, yeah.
Um, and you had a problem with the foot mouse. What mouse was that?
It was large, and it was on sort of a rocker system. So it was about, well, it's bigger than your foot,
Hmm.
and you could tip it forward, back, left, right, and even on
Oh my God.
angles. Oh, it was terrible. I had no idea. Again, the body wasn't meant to do that. And, that was back when, yes, I was using Dragon, but Dragon in its infancy was terrible. And clicking on things was laborious. So I thought, ooh, foot mouse. And yeah, and it was just terrible, along with, trying other input devices. Like there was a Circ Cat, which was sort of like a little tablet that you would tap, and that really right in my trigger finger there just caused intense pain. And it goes back to what Deborah and Will said earlier, is that everyone everyone's RSI is different. It's unique to each person. So uh, one peripheral may work for one, but not another. But then there's the really dangerous ones, like the foot mouse, or there was one that we tried. Went around, you put a dot, I think, in your forehead, you know,
Oh my
and
God.
to control, and you'd be controlling the mouse like this. Oh, the neck pain that resulted. I mean, it's amazing. And this is the problem. There's all these charlatans out there making these devices, well intentioned or not, but I think it's just to line their own pockets and take advantage of, RSI, which is prevalent in our world, and make some bucks off of people like us who are absolutely desperate. And that's the thing. When you're desperate, you will try anything.
Anything. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, there's one thing there, like that. Yeah, I've thought about this, and any sort of device which causes you to move some part of your body that doesn't like have any way to absorb the energy could be really bad for you. So, like for example, I think now Apple made this new headset where it is eye controlled, um, and so like that sounds horrible. Anything where like people have talked about this, you wear a glove and you have this magic keyboard, and that'll be better, right? Because now you're not pressing the keys, so there's no impact, but you're stretching out the tissue, and there's nothing to absorb the energy. So where do you think how do you think that's going to manifest?
yeah.
Um, so yeah, there's lots of terrible ideas out there, and I think Deborah, you said at one point that it's really anything that's where you get into the situation where it's not your nervous system telling your body what to do. It's like now you are somehow like you're just acting in a very unnatural way, and you're forcing your body to do things that the nervous system doesn't like, and it'll show you it doesn't like it.
Yeah, if you want a really great input device, a number 2 pencil or a pen, it's precise. It goes where you want it to go. You don't have to use a lot of effort to use it. It's natural. You can hold it. Like here's a good. Some people strangle their pens, which is a problem. But if you have a good pen hold, you can write and draw and create things without destroying yourself for years. I mean, this has been going on since the 90s. People say, "Oh, just you wait. They're going to solve it with technology." Every what happens is you get a whole new raft of injuries. For instance, the phone. Who would have thunk we'd have all these injuries from phones um, because they're so poorly designed and everyone uses them. And they're little computers. Talk about addictive. I mean, people are always checking their phones, and you're sort of expected to be on your phone if you're working in a corporate setting. I mean, you need to be accessible, and um, the problems with the phone are just. I've done so many videos on, the text neck and de Quervain's disease, and the stress on your thumb of holding the phone. And yet people still have all this faith in technology. Personally, I would really be no tech, low tech. Let's have a conversation face to face. I mean, telephone, just even if you look at the old telephones, they were so nice to hold. They had the little earpiece in here and they fit in your hand. And if you talk too long, your elbow would talk to you, and that was your sign that you've been talking too long on the phone and you need to get off the phone now. You know, but honestly, and when it gets like Alexandria, that neck thing, what are they? What are they thinking? And then there's these people that used to do what do they call them, the cyborgs. Where they'd have something in front of them and then a little thing on the side. Do you know that, Will? It was up at MIT at some point. Do
No,
you know what I'm talking about?
I don't know what you're talking about. No,
You mean the
Oh,
glasses?
the the Google glasses and those things.
it was it was um no, it was a little thing, and they'd be walking across campus, and one eye would be watching a screen, and then something else would be happening here. It was very strange. I mean, very strange. Um, but anyway, uh, so we're getting a little bit off track here, but I want to say hello to Laura Miner. Thank you. She thinks we have wonderful ideas,
Yay.
and and exploring Canada. Hello, Canada.
Hi.
Love your background and new lighting. Thank you. So we've got 2 Canadians here. It's always welcome. So let's get back to our original Canadian. And okay, so harmful, the foot mouse. Now, just honest disclosure here. I use a foot switch to click with,
That's different.
and it's a lifesaver because I've got Alt. I can scroll up, page down, and click.
Yes.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. It works really well. And I also use a circ, but that's because I can use both hands. I put it in front of my belly button, and I never use the click button because it's too hard. I
Yeah.
click with my foot.
Yeah.
And also my technique is, like if I'm going to do something, I think of landing like a butterfly so I'm not getting force. I mean, Will brought this up earlier, the amount of force that goes through your joints. And Dr. Markuson did a really interesting in one of my videos, talked about force coupling, especially with the thumb, the most delicate joint in the whole hand. It's really important because it allows us to grasp things and stuff. But, I think he talked about the number of pounds here as it goes down into the thumb. And so there's no give. Pounding on a glass. Like I was at the grocery store and this poor clerk was tapping this glass really hard. And it was all I could do to say, honey, could you please not do that? I mean, this is her job. She had a poorly placed keyboard. So she's working the keyboard, she's scanning the items, and then she's tapping the screen to choose. Um, and yeah, it just didn't work. Okay, so exploring Canada. Let's talk about what she's saying. And hi, Laura. Okay. If I could turn back the clock, I would pay attention to the pain sooner rather than pushing through it. Yes.
Yes.
Amen.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
definitely.
one of the most important things, but people often think it's kind of, if you watch sports, which I don't much like football because it upsets me so much. Because, I mean, these big, heavy guys are racing full speed, knocking themselves down. And I just think, oh God, I'm thinking about their cervical spine. I'm thinking about their hands. I'm thinking about their back and all these things that could go wrong. Um, but what happens if one of them gets injured? They are surrounded by all the team doctors and, you know, athletic trainers. They're carried off in glory off the field. And then they say, I'm going to get back. I'm going to fight through this. But what they don't talk about is the fact that the tissue won't be the same. It's like when you sprain your ankle, it's so much easier to re-sprain the ankle because the tissue, yeah, it gets better, but it's just it's just not the same. So thank you for the comment.
Yeah, and
Right.
I think one thing that I learned through this injury is how much top athletes deal with pain. That's part of the sport. Like almost every sport is enduring pain. So like it's like a lot of these heroes, and also they have a lot of incentive to not show that on their face. It's definitely not good for business. It's not good in the sports because they're competing against someone, and if they, if you see the other person grimacing, that kind of gives you like that motivation. Oh, if you're like catching up to someone at the finish line and you know that they're out, it gives you that little energy to go a little further. So so many top athletes are dealing with like tons of pain that's going to be carried into their life. Andre Agassi, the tennis player, wrote his book Open, and he talks about, I mean, he would be in excruciating pain and then go out and like survive for 5 hours, and he will carry that in, for the rest of his life. And so it's like they just don't show it, but like this is actually what all these people are doing.
Yeah.
And if you if you're not getting paid hundreds of millions of dollars for it, maybe you don't want to do it. Even then, I don't know if it's worth it.
You just took the words out of my
Yeah.
mouth, Will, because I was thinking, these gymnasts, they're like pounding on their wrists and hanging their whole bodies off them and just really wailing. And I just look at them and I think, what's it going to be like when you're 40, 50, 60? Um, and if we look into the animal kingdom, you won't find animals inflicting pain on themselves. Your dog has more intelligence. Like I love watching the animals because one of my friends has this cute little dog and he sort of does this pendiculation and then he gets up and he shakes his fur. I love that sound where they're shaking their fur. And he just does natural things and then he goes runs around a little bit and then he goes to his little bed and takes a nap. And I'm thinking this is so much more intelligent than what we do, like we're straining and striving and doing all this stuff, which just leads to destruction of joints and soft tissue. And, how long does the glory last? I just don't
Nothing's
know.
worth it.
I
Nothing
don't
is
think
worth that
so.
kind of suffering. It's really not. And and I think I know this is getting off topic, but given the sports professionals, right, the carrot is the money, and that money they will have, and if they're smart about it, invest it and grow it and everything else, they can be set for life and retire much earlier than most people. But as we've just been discussing here, what is all that money for if you can't afterwards enjoy just normal things, you know?
You're coming to a point that Will just touched on. taking way too many NSAIDs,
Oh, yeah.
non-steroidal anti-inflammatories. So the other thing that you sort of, I I bet it's in Agassi's book. I bet he was taking painkillers, and I bet a
He was
lot
doing
of
cortisone shots a lot.
he was taking
Oof.
cortisone, which
Yeah.
is even worse because I can't tell you the number of times where I was sitting in the doctor's office when people were getting diagnosed and treated, and they'd all say, everything's healed except where I got the shot. And this is considered treatment for repetitive strain injury, cortisone injections. And I am, I have never had one because I kept hearing these people saying, everything, they can rupture tendons, they can destroy soft tissues, and nonsteroidal anti inflammatories can really do a number on your stomach. And so you're working without the friendly pain that's saying, hey, you're doing too much. The pain is there to say, hang
Stop.
on.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'll
exactly.
mention some things about the regrets I have. Again, like I don't know if regrets the right word because I didn't have the information at the time, but I have done a cortisone shot. I can't say that I experienced any necessarily problems. It just did nothing for me.
Well,
Bingo.
Um,
that's the other
and
problem is that
yeah,
it doesn't always help.
so it was yeah, and I also did a carpal tunnel release surgery, which I really think was rushed. I think that I should have listened to my gut. There was definitely some yellow flags, if not red flags, when I was with my doctor. I mean, to Deborah, they were red flags. We talked about this because he didn't check my neck even, which yeah, in retrospect, um, is a big warning sign. And I think that like again, I didn't have the information at the time as much, or I did, but like I was getting conflicting advice. So it's like person A is telling you this, person B is telling you this, person C is telling you this, and I think that the key thing that I could take away is is someone selling you a shortcut or a cheaper solution, because that's something that people will gravitate to. Of course you want it to be healed. Even the surgery, which might sound like a big thing, it was like, well, I just have to, I'm going to take anesthesia, I'm not going to do anything, I'm just going to, I don't care, so it'll have a recovery period. But surgery was like, in a way, this cheap solution. Um, and same with the cortisone shot. So I think like if you're new to having this injury, like it's a difficult thing, and so be wary of any time someone is telling you something where it's a shortcut, because that's what you're going to
There
want to
is
be
no
true.
quick fix.
Yeah.
Exactly. So
Well
you want that
said.
to be true, and that's the thing that like you'll just constantly go towards, or many people will. And there's a lot of people that it's a big business, in all sorts. It can be different potions people are selling you, magic, magical herb. Like there's all sorts of stuff. Whether and it doesn't matter whether you're at like some person that's like very voodoo, or you're at like an MD. It's you kind of real. You get the same stuff. And so I think you have to be very careful about that when you first have the injury. And also, the other thing is saying like uh, no to the unsolicited advice, because everyone kind of, at least for me, that was a hard part. I had so many people saying like, okay, try this supplement. Have you tried this? Have you tried this diet? Have you tried this? And it's like, I mean, at some point, it's like somehow like when you say no, it's like you don't respect their opinion. But it makes me think of another analogy where like um, you have like this lockbox, and you have this like you're trying to figure out the combination, and we live with this condition. So for us, like solving the RSI would be opening the lock, and you're trying every combination methodically. You're trying to figure it out, and someone walks along and they're like, "Hey, have you tried 0724?" You know, and
It's a
so
good
it's like,
analogy.
yeah, and so you're like, okay, like it could be, that could be it, but like you just, if you're not really fully invested in it, then it's not going to help.
Yeah, but are they doctors? What qualification do they have? They know less about RSI than the doctor who gave you the splints and the non-steroidal
Yeah,
But it's
anti-inflammatory that took you back to
desperation.
work. It is
It's
desperation.
desperation.
And it
And
is politeness too, but we're going to have another separate segment on just this issue, how to handle the incoming, because um, I read this article and this woman said, "Do you not think that I have not thought of and tried every single thing that you're. I mean, she was just like through gritted teeth. She was laying it on the line like, hello, I don't want your advice. What you want is some compassion and some understanding. And people who say, can I hold the door open for you?
Yes.
Something
Yes.
like that. You know, how are you doing there? Let me carry your groceries.
Oh,
Let me push the cart. I'm not going to shake your hand. Don't worry.
yeah.
You know, that kind of thing can be just a little bit of kindness. We should do an episode called Things I Wish People Would Do instead of offering unsolicited
Yeah.
advice.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I think they might be trying to help, but they also might be trying to get rid of, it's like they can't deal with, they don't want to deal with it. They just want you not to have a problem so that they don't have to offer
Listen.
any, listen or be a friend.
Yeah.
Be a friend to you.
Oh,
Yeah.
true, true, true.
Which leads us to, and jump in if I'm missing anything,
Sh-
but you said not reaching out for help when severely depressed. And I think we should talk about that.
Okay.
Alexandria, it's yours.
Yeah, I'll try not to get too emotional. The only support mechanism I had was my partner, is my partner, who's absolutely wonderful, um, and probably saved my life. But you need more than just one person, and for me, I didn't want to burden my partner all the time with what I was feeling and going through, and not having anyone else really to talk to, sorry, who would be sympathetic. And so I just closed myself off and got myself into a lot of trouble mentally and emotionally. And I wish I would have tried harder or told my partner just how bad I was doing. And um, eventually she figured it out and, uh, and acted, and that was good. But I let it go too long. And so if you're having horrible thoughts, depressing thoughts for a prolonged period of time, reach out. There are so many more resources now than there were 25 years ago for people in chronic pain. Um, and sometimes it just takes one conversation with someone at the right time. So don't close yourself off.
Yeah, I think this is something that a lot of people don't understand, and I'm so sorry you had to go through that for so long, Alexandria.
Okay.
I mean, people do, they commit suicide, and
Yep.
if anybody is out there feeling like it, please call 911, call the suicide hotline, talk to
Yes.
somebody, because you need to get to the other side. And very often, as Alexandria said, one person's understanding can hold that space for you.
Yeah.
And it's very depressing.
Yeah.
There's a whole connection between the hand and that the brain and the emotional state. I mean, even in language, it's like get a grip, get a handle on it. I mean, we constantly referring to our hands as the tools that are superpowers. They really
Yeah.
are, and they can do so much for us. And then when we don't have the carefree use of them, then it's really hard. And other people very often don't get it, don't understand. And so there will be another episode on that. But I think it's good to also see, I mean, cultivate your friends, but I think it's good to see a professional person,
Yeah.
because that way you can, if you see someone professional, you get the perspective, and they also are paid to listen to you. Whereas if you don't want to overburden your friends or your partners, or sometimes you feel like you just, I mean, I knew a doctor who dealt with chronic pain, and he said he kept a box of Kleenex on his desk, that was within easy reach of the patients, and he would spend hours. Sometimes I would wait to see him for a long time because someone was crying.
Yeah.
And he says, I can't help them with this situation. It's chronic. It's something that there's no really good solution for. But what I can do is listen to them because their mother's tired of hearing about it, their partner's tired of hearing about it, their friends are tired of hearing about it, but I can listen. And I thought that was a stellar example of what true doctoring is.
Yeah.
And I thought he was the most compassionate person. So I'm glad you brought that up, and I know it's painful to talk about it, but I'm glad you mentioned that because I can guarantee you that somebody out there is going to identify with
Yeah.
you
Oh,
and
yeah.
that. So the last thing, if there's
I want to comment on that too.
okay,
Yeah, first of all, like, I'm so sorry that you went through that. That's horrible.
Oh, thanks,
And
Will.
yeah, thank you for sharing that. I I guess, like, luckily I had the fortune that, well, because this could segue into something else, another problem that I wish. Well, I basically thought RSI was totally in my head, psychosomatic, um, at first. So that was a big mistake because I decided, I'm going to push through the pain and I'm just going to think it's all in my head. But luckily for me, I did actually find a therapist, like, right away, because that was how I was first dealing with the problem. So then that helped me a little bit because as I was dealing with, like, a lot of really, yeah, difficult emotions with the issue, like, I would just be lying in bed staring at the ceiling like I can do nothing, and getting depressed as the injury got worse and worse, slowly over time. Um, then, like, I had someone to talk to, and that, yeah, I cannot recommend it enough. It's, I think, yeah, for anyone, even if you don't have the injury, like that, spending money on your mental health is some of the best way you can spend your money. And funny enough, now I was talking to Deborah about this before earlier. Um, like, I've done a lot of work in my emotional department, and it's funny because now with RSI, where I used to be able to surf every day, going to the beaches, like doing so many cool things. Like, from an outside perspective, I think people would see my life, anyways, on like a downhill. Now I can't do all this, but I've actually, since the injury at this point, like, I'm happier day to day, and it's incredible because I've lost, like, so much of my ability to do things, but like, there is a way, with this injury to actually get to quite a happy place in your life.
Exactly. Bingo. It's it's very triumphant to overcome those things um and to reprioritize. I think that's the number one positive thing that came out of all of this for me is I reevaluated what was truly important. Like
Yes.
ironing the sheets, not that important. Hanging the towels right, not that important. And it seems silly, but these things add up. And yeah,
I wrote a chapter in my book about the gifts of RSI, and I got some blowback for doing that. What gifts of RSI?
ah,
But what you two are talking about is exactly it. You learn to cherish the important things in life and not let RSI steal your happiness
exactly.
or your sense of self or your sense of contribution. And I really think, I mean, part of my mission is to really change things so that so many people don't get injured because it's just so depressing to have people come to me because they've lost the use of their hands. And what, I can't give them some sort of magical solution or some quick fix, and it's hard for them to find doctors and physical therapists, and it's really depressing. So what we need to do, and I keep harping on this, but I'm getting to a point, and it's we need to take our power, which is the power of the purse, the power of the consumer choice, the power of raising our collective voice, because we do have a voice. If we act together, if we got enough people, and that's why I did my petition, because I really think that we need to pressure. OSHA, the manufacturers, the public health people, so that there's a really massive campaign to go to the source here. Stop using these dangerous tools. Design tools that are friendly to the human hand, because people don't know what to do. They don't know what a straight wrist is. They don't know what good technique is. They don't realize that you could get into trouble with as little as 2 hours of computer use a day. What are they supposed to do? That's their job. It's very complicated. And so, oh, this is interesting. So anyway, I'll put up the link to sign the petition. But Sunny says, my gift of RSI is how much it helped me my phone addiction.
Wow,
Maybe
that's
she's,
powerful.
yeah, stop using the phone so much. This is good. Talk to people in person. It's really wonderful. I mean, you get this whole different sense of people when you're actually in the room. Now, I mean, this is wonderful. I'm so happy. Will's in Costa Rica, you're in Canada, God knows where everybody else is. And so I'm happy we can gather around our little electronic hearth. But it is special when you actually are present. So
Yeah.
thank you for that comment. We like that.
Yeah, and I definitely like RSI. It kicked me out of my routine completely. So that was really good because it just and I think like I think this is a really good topic to mention the different gifts. Like these are the things that I got. One was that eventually I started asking for help more, and that like opened up like a whole new world to me because
Yeah.
I didn't even realize like how much people can be willing to help in many ways. Of course, you deal with all the situations where they're not, but then like there are a lot of people who actually are very helpful in all sorts of ways. So that's really nice. And then um, in the new routine, I found one sport that is pretty good. This is a new water sport that I'm doing, which is free diving, and you don't need your hands for that. So you got fins. That's quite nice. So I found that, and I love that sport. And it's been a great meditation as well. So
That's
that's
awesome.
another.
Yeah, we love hearing this. Will's frozen for a minute. We love hearing the success stories and the happiness. And I think you also find out who your true friends are.
Oh boy, do you ever. Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for me it was discovering or rediscovering cooking. I didn't cook as much way back when as I do now, and it, taking charge of your own life and realizing, okay, what I put in my body affects me.
Hmm.
And so I started making my food from scratch, from very simple back when my hands didn't work very well to now, I've got all kinds of kitchen tools and gadgets to help me cook healthily. Ah, Will's back.
Will's back.
Oh, audio.
We lost his audio. But while we're getting Will back with the audio, tell us about not working hard enough to find a physiotherapist to help you, because
Yeah,
that's really important. Finding your team. Finding
it
your team.
is. And again, that kind of goes back to thinking that everyone in the profession is on the same page and that they all have access to the same knowledge.
Hmm.
And they don't. They really don't. And listen to your gut. If your gut's telling you that this therapist is not working for you, then find another one. And I wish I had tried others, but like again, I was under the delusion that they were all kind of the same. One
Yeah,
physiotherapist
you're
was as good as
not created equal.
no, no. So keep going and find the one that works for you, which may not work for other people as well. So that's important as well. Everyone's unique and different. It's like you said, it's finding your people, your support, and that's very important. But yeah, at the time, I just thought they were all the same.
Yeah. Um, so
Oh,
is there anything
Hey,
else?
hey,
Anything
Will
else we
sorry
too.
want
about
to
that.
say? Will's back.
Yay.
Um, so anything else we want to bring up? It's coming along.
Yeah, I mean, there was one other thing I did want to say
Okay.
during this, which was the like thinking that it's a psychosomatic issue. That was something for me. It was a big mystery. There was no, like, I didn't have any action or very few actions where I would do something and then I'd feel pain. And so then there was, uh, there's a lot of people also saying, yeah, it's an issue that's in your head. And so if you work through it, or if you, they said basically the problem is that your mind is like creating a distraction from some emotional problem. And
Is that
so
the Sarno
it
method?
is, yeah, it's the Sarno
Yeah.
method. And I don't know if other people have said this, but there is it, but I've heard this, even if like Sarno is, I think, the biggest person with this theory that has done this, but other people I've also heard this, even though they didn't say Sarno himself. But yeah, the issue is what the they say, okay, well, if you like start doing the physical therapy, or if you start changing your behaviors for this, now you're giving into the problem and you're letting your brain trick you. And so I mean, it seems like a reasonable argument, but I really like believe that, and I tried to go through it and it totally didn't work. And I mean, I guess they would say you didn't really fully commit to it. So but there's no
Like
there's,
blaming the
I mean,
victim.
it's a paradox. There's no way to like argue against it. That's why it's like super convincing. um, but I would say two things. Like, a lot of times people, there's all these videos also of like, yes, I believe the Sarno method and it went away. I would suggest, if you see that, ask them a couple of years later, because it's an episodic thing. Also, the other thing is that I think you said this, it's a physical problem that maybe has an emotional component, because if you are feeling more stressed, if you are feeling more emotions, pain can be amplified, but that doesn't mean it's not a physical problem.
Yeah.
So people maybe like they get into a better emotional state and that somehow distracts them from the pain and they think that they're better. But yeah, it's not, I really don't think it's like that at all. And, or
It's
it's,
not all in your head. And if your
yeah,
doctor dismisses you and says it's all in your head, you really need to find a doctor who will take you seriously. And I recommend seeing a psychologist, not because it's all in your head, but because you're going to have emotional impact from not being able
hmm
to use your hands normally.
exactly.
Your whole life is falling apart.
Yeah.
Exactly. So the
So,
good thing, you could work on the emotions without having to, you know, do something dumb like try to push through the pain because you're trying to tell your body that it's not giving you the right signal.
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Agreed. Well said.
yeah, I think there's enough victim blaming, and people are just trying to do their job, earn a living, live their lives. And it's hard enough to have RSI without people saying, "Oh, it's all in your head," and not taking you seriously and not treating you well, and not giving you really helpful healing techniques. And the other thing is that healing is slow. Oh my gosh. I mean, it's a tightrope. You have to like figure out how much can I do today, and what's going to flare me, and what am I thinking, and what do I absolutely have to do. And this thing about letting other people help you, I'm so happy that you brought that up, Will. But it's
Mhm.
hard a lot of times. I have trouble asking for help. It's like, could you open this jar for me? And um, one time I had a problem and I had some painkillers delivered, and I realized I couldn't open the darn childproof cap. So I'm shouting at the delivery person saying, "Could you come back and help me open this thing? I'll tip you." And he says, "No, no, 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 no. Perfect gentleman helped me, no problem." But it's that kind of thing. What was I thinking? How am I going to get this thing open? And I'm supposed to take this medicine, and oh, but yeah, it's um, it's a problem. But I'm just so happy that we've also talked about happiness
Yes.
and not letting RSI steal that, and be, being productive human beings. And I also believe truly that we can live a spectacular life and work even if with RSI. I think we can make an impact. I think we can take this lemon and make some lemonade out of it. I mean, sometimes things happen and doors close and you're off doing something that you hadn't planned on, and it turns into a thing that gives you a great deal of satisfaction. It gives you a feeling of agency and power, like you're really doing something important in the world. So,
Control. You're able to control something in your life, because I think it's losing that control that is really damaging to the psyche.
yeah.
And when you feel like I was saying with my cooking, I can now control what food I put into my body,
Hmm.
right? That's one thing. And I'm not saying become a control freak, but it's when you feel accomplished with something. And these are all, and no matter how small it is, like, oh my gosh, I was able to pick up a glass or a cup that was half full of water today instead of just a quarter cup. Or I broke one less dish this week. No,
Yeah.
I mean, but that kind of idea, and it's perspective and thinking positively and embracing those, we've always talked little rewards, or not rewards, but achievement.
Triumphs. Yeah.
Triumphs,
Yeah.
exactly.
Triumphs. Yeah.
One
I hear
step at
you.
a time.
I hear you. And the other thing I'd like to bring up is that we have gifts other than what we do. We can be good friends to people. Our um, our injury can make us more compassionate, better listeners, better role models for other people because they're watching us going through life
Yeah.
and not being bitter or depressed or not doing anything. Like, I think it's really important to work in the sense of doing something that's important to you, that you can do, that you feel offers a contribution to society. I think that's important.
Yeah.
Um, so we have a question here. Can
Ooh.
carpal tunnel syndrome, can push-ups make carpal tunnel syndrome worse? Absolutely. Don't do them.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
don't do push-ups.
Yeah,
I did a
and
video
people
on
will tell
this.
you, people will tell you otherwise, but I've experimented this with surfing, and it took time for it to happen, and it was difficult because, yeah, like, you might not feel it right away, but I'm very careful of how I analyze how I feel now, after, because there's sometimes the big thing with RSI, there's time delay before you start to feel things, and so that's what makes the injury really tricky. I mean, if you felt it like immediately, you would just know. But sometimes with surfing, I do feel it. I do a lot of push-ups and unweighted things trying to do it, and it's not good. I do want to surf, so I'm kind of like cheating, and sometimes I do it, but I know that I'm paying a price if I do it.
It does so many bad things. It displaces the thumb. It it crowds the tunnel
Hmm.
and cramps the nerve. There's a video, an excellent video with Dr. Markison on my channel, and it's entitled carpal, can you get RSI from carpal tunnel syndrome?" If you search my channel, it's excellent. I highly recommend that you do that. And also there's one on how to build up your pecs without push-ups. You can do them in a way that I show you on the video. Um, but really I don't know what gender you are, but if you're a man, you want to work on your back because you don't want tight pecs because it can squeeze the nerves and lead to numbness and tingling down the hand. You don't want to do that. Plus, you don't look big. If you want to look big, I mean, I do this when in at the gym and doing personal training. I mean, you look at the guys, and I say, I can make you have a bigger chest in 2 seconds. They go, how? Open up your chest, honey. You're gonna really look good. Just strengthen your back so that your chest is broad, and that usually makes an impression. And then they understand why it's important to work the back, because the back muscles are what letting the brachial plexus breathe. It's the system of nerves that goes under the collarbone and down your arm and stuff. So yeah, I would do that. So oh, we got a nice note from Laura Miner.
Oh.
Oh, that's so sweet. Deborah Quilter's a
Aw.
gem. Speaking of gifts, well, thank you. So are you, Laura. We appreciate you for all you do with your group and the support you've given me over the years. Appreciate it. So I think we've had a lot of conversation, and I hope that we can all come back and reconvene and talk about some of the things we really didn't get a chance to explore in depth. I'd like to thank Will and Alexandria for agreeing to be here today. It's such a gift to have two people who are really thriving with RSI to share with the community and, show that your life can be productive and go on and be happy. And so we'll come back. We're going to do more of these live streams on different topics. But in the meantime, let me. You're welcome, Karen. Thank you so much. So sweet. Okay, let me put up my little blurb here. So if you're new, thank you for coming and take care of your hands. And also, if you could sign my petition, I would be so grateful to you. I have a petition for an RSI patient bill of rights, and it would just really help matters if people would sign it so that we can get some action and why is it not? Okay, here we go. Have this situation. It's all about prevention. Oh, thanks. I'm a guy. Hello, 4748X. Thanks for letting me know. I kind of thought you might be a guy. And I guarantee you'll have really nice pecs if you do. I mean, Will can attest to this. He's
Yeah,
worked with me.
we did some good body transformation without using the hands at
Yeah,
all.
Will has gotten really, really buff without lifting heavy weights. So he's my my model guy. So just because you have RSI doesn't mean you can't get very strong. And the stronger you are in your back, the better off you're going to be in terms of your upper extremity. But that's another. I'm going to do an exercise program someday. You can only do so much in these things. But I'm going to say goodbye to everybody. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Spread the
Thank
word.
you.
And we'll see you next time. Sign the petition.
Bye.